What is good, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Fundamism Podcast. I'm your host and master of shenanigans, Paul Long, and we got another good one. Newsflash, they're all good. But before we introduce our latest guests, I would like to shout out to our sponsor. For those of you that have been with us from the jump, you know that Charlie Hustle has been with us every step of the way. They're amazing in the community. They're amazing with coming up with awesome stuff to wear. And ultimately, they'd be amazing for you in your holiday gifting. So check out charliehustle.com to learn more. Now, I've had an opportunity to meet a lot of individuals throughout my life. And many of my strongest relationships have come from my own place of mental relief. And that place for me is the gym. I've been going to Lifetime Fitness for some years, and I've run into this guy a ton. I mean, it never feels that no matter what time I go, he's there. And I think that's just the universe saying, I should stop deflecting because he's so big and intimidating in my mind and go up there and introduce myself. So that's what's happened. And I am stoked to introduce to you current VP of Sales for Siemens and former Purdue Boilermaker, Mr. Aaron Starnes. What's good, Aaron?
Hey, Paul. Glad to be here, man. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today.
Hey, I'm stoked to have you because you and I have a lot in common. Yeah. We have very different personality styles, but what interests me most about you and even in our path and how they intersect is how similarly two people with different perspectives can think. Yeah. And so before we get into all of that, we've got a lot of amazing discussions. The people want to know, Aaron, what do you do for fun, my friend?
So avid outdoorsman, spend a ton of time camping with my family. Something we picked up a number of years ago, avid hunter, literally anything outdoors. And, as you mentioned at the beginning, I'm a gym rat. It's my place to just go and be myself. It's part of my mission. It's part of, just talking with people, getting out there and being a part of your community. And I love being at the gym. Half of it's just people watching. The other half is staying in shape. And not ready to give that championship belt over to my boys and girls yet, to give that up quite yet. So, yeah.
Well, that is a perfect segue into something that we've had a lot of discussion about at the gym and relationships and what we're there for. I do want to go into that with you, but before I do, I know it's hunting season for some. What are we hunting these days? And when's the next time you're going, my friend?
Yeah, so already did opening day for pheasant right now. Getting a chance here in a couple of weeks actually to go back out again with my father. It's getting up there in the age years, but he's 80 this year, but still likes to get out and walk the fields with me a little bit. So looking forward to that trip coming up here in December up in Iowa.
For sure. Well, I admire that a great deal, especially right now. It's difficult, as you very well know, with the lack of personal connection to be with family as much as you desire to be. So great job on that. Now, you grew up in a gym setting. I mean, you grew up with fitness and health and competition being the forefront of everything that you do. So I'm sure it kind of drives you philosophically as well as physically. Yeah. So you were a standout offensive lineman coming up, or what was that journey like?
Yeah, you and I maybe even talked about this, man. I was the big fat kid growing up.
Oh, really?
I was, man. Really was. Found the gym when I was going into high school and really loved what it did for me. Gave me some confidence in other areas for me. And really kind of started to transform me. I found out very, very quickly. I loved the gym. I just liked what it was doing to me and my body personally. And I was always an athletic kid, really was. So that wasn't ever the case, but I just, I grew up, having to deal with kind of the weight piece. Still, you know me, I'm 6'5", 280 pounds, right? So still have that going for me, but tried to put it in some different areas as I got older, for sure.
I mean, you were a fit 6'5", 285. But I mean, you look good, brother. And that goes back to, you are a very life is all perspective, right?
Yeah.
And we as a society tend to make judgments, unfortunately. And as much time as you and I have spent in the gym, we've seen folks that you could tell are doing it for themselves, and we've seen folks that you could tell are doing it for others, and
Yeah.
their ego and hoping that others see them. And I know that you're not that guy, and that's
Yeah.
why I can relate so much to you. One thing that we did talk about is I know that you got a foundation that you're currently in the works of setting up.
Yeah.
Really exciting.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that, but that kind of led us into a discussion of what you and I were wearing growing up
Yeah.
in junior high and high school. And you told me you wore some pretty baggy stuff.
We my mom made some clothes for me, took a couple of different, I was the kid that had a couple of different uniforms that mom had to put together for sure. But never did without. But man, we were talking about wearing the Pro Wings, going to Payless Shoe Source, rocking those things, man. Those work well till they hit the sun, and turned yellow after about 36 seconds, right, of being out in the sun. So grew up wearing that stuff and just would, wanted anything just to have that, Coke shirts and, Coke or Pepsi, whatever that may be, or the baggy jeans or whatever that may be. So no, just grew up with a great family life. Never did without for sure. Man, my parents worked their butts off, and I think that's where I got my work ethic. But yeah, man, I wanted just to fit in, man. I think that's a big portion about today.
Well, yeah, life in general, right? Both in the workplace and at home. I think that so many people are driven in identifying their value and what they offer others, and their benchmark is what others think, right? And unfortunately, if you don't feel good about yourself, then there's never going to be any level of value that others can instill in you that's going to move the needle forward. And you as a leader in a pretty significant organization do that regularly. But long before that, I'm sure that some of that confidence came from the football field. So as a heavier set, using your words, young man, when did you find football, and how did you identify that this could be a thing in your life that could potentially move you forward?
Man, whether I even said this when you and I were talking the other day, the thing about football for me was I could put that helmet on, and I still do this today, Paul, but I can put that helmet on and I could be somebody that I really wasn't. I grew up, whether you think so or not, or know this, I'm actually an introvert by nature. Spent 20 plus years really kind of transforming myself in who I am today. I was the guy that literally, man, when they were introducing you, man, I'd duck out the back room as quick as I could, all that stuff. But when I started playing football at such a young age, I got a chance to be somebody that I wasn't really in real life. And I could run around and hit people and, act out a little bit and, be a little bit more violent and things that I really couldn't do in my personal life, I guess, even as a kid. And man, that just, I still do that today when I get myself into situations, man. I just think about, I can put that helmet on and be somebody that I'm not. And people can see me differently.
Yes. And you do that well. You navigate that very well based on the discussions that we've had. And I look forward to learning more how you do that in the work setting. But you had the opportunity, your football career culminated at Purdue University, and you got to play with a perennial all-pro quarterback by the name of Drew Brees that a lot of people know and understand. What was the pinnacle of your football career? Like, if you had a defining moment that you look back to and you think, I can't believe that happened, or that was an amazing experience, what would it be for you?
And there's a number. I mean, there is a number of them, but for me, and you and I've talked a lot about this, my football career definitely helped set me in a different direction, but it doesn't define who I am. I don't bring it up that often, to be honest with you. A lot of times it's people that are with me that bring up the Purdue thing and Drew Brees and some of the other guys that I played with. But I think from a pinnacle standpoint for me, when I was a senior, I was given, it was the Leonard Wilson Award. And it was really kind of an award that was given by my peers, and the guys that I played with and the coaching staff that said this guy exemplifies dedication and hard work. I wasn't, the best of athletes. I was always just, I did exactly what the coaches asked me to do. Wasn't a guy that got in trouble very often. But that was, for me, that was a big piece, because that was given to me by the guys that I played with, and recognized that I showed up to work every day with my hat in my hand and ready to go every single day, no matter what.
Now, it's interesting, your concept of when I could put that helmet on and be somebody that I'm not.
Yeah.
Football historically, especially the more we learn about it, it could be a very dark sport, and dark for many reasons. One of which you mentioned, just the violence associated with it. But a byproduct of the violence, of course, is the aftermath and the impact that it plays on your body, not just physically, but mentally, right? And so to go out and, put a hat on a hat or get down in the trenches or whatever, you have to have some semblance of tenacity and to use your word once again, violence.
Yeah.
Was that difficult for you, or is that something that you have in you innately? Like, are you, while still openly an introvert and embracing that, do you have some darkness in you that
for sure. For sure. Grew up, like I think a lot of kids, man. I grew up, my dad was a Golden Gloves boxer, and we did some of that growing up. Spent a lot of time on, with the speed bag with them. And again, I go back to, I think my parents would describe me, I was a very nice kid, that sort of thing, man. But I always knew, just being a big kid, I could hurt somebody in a hurry. But no, I unfortunately, I do have a mean streak in me. Try to use it for good. Again, that's one of the things I loved. I was able to get that aggression that I, when I had to be that softer guy. The football aspect allowed me to definitely get that aggression out, and just, you got to be a little bit sadistic to love that. Love the headaches that come with it. All the stuff. I'm sure, any of my former teammates would listen. You get to the point where you love the headaches. You love the hits, everything associated with it. And I know it sounds bad, but even some of you get those dizzy hits, talking out your ear hole hits, some of that stuff, and you get up and you're like, that was a good one. And it drives you, okay, I'm coming out for the next one. You better watch it. So.
Well, I don't want to spend too much time on football, because first and foremost, I'm sure that a lot of people listening as a Fundamism Podcast listener, we can't all relate to being D1 athletes, which I never was, but I tried real good. But nevertheless, it's just it's so timely right now. I don't know if you saw this last night. I was on Twitter, and the current tight end for the Atlanta Falcons, Hayden Hurst, had an amazing story. And if you haven't seen it, Aaron, I strongly recommend. I'll even send a link to it. But he openly talks about his depression and his darkness, which is the reason why I asked you. And the time where he actually tried to commit suicide. And so, it hailed from this experience of growing up in life. He was always like the cream of the crop, and he was going to be this. He was actually in the Pittsburgh organization for baseball, and all of a sudden he just lost his ability to throw. Like as close as you and I are right now virtually, he was a 90-mile-an-hour fastball thrower, and now all of a sudden he couldn't hit it. So he hit this kid in the head, and he said, I just, I got so embarrassed, and I lost kind of what defined me, and I got lost in that darkness. And so this is something, as you very well know, not a lot of people talk about openly. And it's sad, because there's so many people that need help. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to have you on today. And the whole principle behind Fundamism is the fundamentals of a fun and optimistic lifestyle. What can we do deliberately to invite more joy, fun, and fulfillment in life? And that takes me to you, right? We're at the gym.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like in the midst of this pandemic, I was kind of in a dark place, and not for any of the reasons you would think. Like it wasn't revenue. I lost a part of my own personal value in being out on stages and traveling and stuff like that. But my escape was always the gym. Like that was my meditation,
Right.
that was my relaxation period. And for 2 hours or an hour and a half, it was just me, my music, and working out. And there got to be a time in the midst of the pandemic where, because everybody was longing for personal connection and interaction,
For
it
sure.
was just conversation after conversation.
Yep.
And I invited it. And those of you guys listening, you've heard me talk about this, but it was Aaron, it was you who kind of shed a little bit of light on why we do what we do or what the benefits could come from said conversation. So to open this up, how do you manage your own personal wellness plan at the gym versus your willingness to help others when you see that they might potentially need help?
Yeah, interesting. That, I look at some of this stuff as just what you said, man. There are a lot of people hurting even prior to this, man. There's men and women in general. I obviously, gravitate towards men, because I know some of the stuff where I was at, even a few years ago, dealing with some ups and downs and depressions and, depression issues and sleeplessness and all this stuff, man. When you're, I'll be 45 this year. And, I really try to pay attention to people's body language. It tells a lot about somebody, man. And, it's really important for me, especially even nowadays with these masks on, right? Making eye contact with people, man. Like I see you, right? Just is a huge differentiator to walking in there with your mask on and your head down. I could very easily, Paul, go into the gym, do my thing, look intimidating, have a scowl on my face, also, you know me. I mean, I can get into my own little groove and mindset, that sort of thing. But instead, I think that, my mission sometimes puts me in a direction to say, hey, reach out to that person or say something to that person, or, just ask them what they're. So my big thing is I ask a lot. I'll see somebody at the gym. I say, hey, what's your story? Hey, tell me your story. Right. And catch people off guard a lot of times, and they want to talk. So you just kind of read, you can kind of read people's body language a lot of times. And that's, I'll take that any day over the week. I mean, I'm at the gym right now quite a bit, and it is my place to get away for a few minutes. But man, if I get a 15-minute workout in and I get a chance to have a great conversation with somebody and meet them where they're at, that makes all the difference to me. And that's what helps build me up and keep me excited, and that's what gets me motivated. I got to tell you is meeting people where they're at and seeing if there's something you can do to help somebody out. And a lot of times it's just having a conversation with them.
Sure. I wholeheartedly agree. And I constantly battle that because there's a fine line between, helping others to the extent that you can help them, and helping others to the detriment of yourself and your energy. Right. And so I bring that up because, there was a time where I kind of lost my zest for the gym, and that's something significant in my life, because for 15, 20 years, I mean, the gym was my spot. And I got to a place here where I didn't even want to go anymore. And so what I love about what you're saying is we just had this interaction roughly 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And there are folks, and that they exist in life, that they need help, but they're not willing to do anything to help themselves. So ultimately it becomes more of just a sounding board and putting their problems on others, rather than identifying solutions or even reaching out to others for solutions to said problems. So my point is, there are a couple of folks that I have learned to kind of navigate around at the gym. I got the other day, I do about 50 pull-ups. I'm on my way to my second workout. My second activity. I'm strategically navigating around certain individuals, and then I see you. And boy, do we start talking. I mean, we talked for 45 minutes about charity and podcasts and everything else. And I go, are you walking out? No. So walk out, and you said, did you even work out? But to your point, like, that was what I needed that day. Like that was to be cliche again, the universe at that time saying, like, I indulge in great conversation. It wasn't me exhausting myself. It wasn't me trying to give all of myself to help somebody improve in their day. It was two people that were genuinely interested in one another. So that's what I love about you, brother, is there's a lot of people out there that we create conversation, but not deliberately in hopes of really learning or pulling more out of folks. So we ask folks like, how are you?
Yeah.
But when you ask a question like, tell me your story, that is so deeper, right? And it just shows that you're genuinely interested. So how is that manifested in your career? Because we talked a lot about personal aspects of your life. How does this personal connection and your willingness to engage with others impacted your career?
Man, I tell you, it's not 100%, right? So for the folks that listen to these podcasts of yours, it's not 100%, man. It's not a science, and I'm not perfect by any means. But I think too is to try to connect with people. I've tried to be something for somebody, for other leaders that I'm not, and I think that's one of the things that manifests itself. And what is true to me is meeting people where they're at. And I think in all cases, Paul, I think something has to happen or has happened in people's lives that make them change, right? For me and my and even what's happened in my leadership, even a few years later, is that people, I think, are our most precious resource from a business standpoint. I know sometimes probably my sales organization doesn't think so, but behind the scenes, you're working for better compensation. You're working for, trying to take things off their plate, maybe things that they don't necessarily see all the time. But honestly, my sales team, my sales leaders, my regional vice presidents are they're the lifeblood for me and my organization, because if I can make them happy and they enjoy what they're doing and take things off their plate and show them that the organization that they're working for, and for the organization, it's not just Siemens for me, but it's me, right? I'm my own brand. And if I can do that and hold myself accountable to do the right thing most of the time for them, right? It's not 100%. There's some things that I just can't do to make you happy, right? I think that's what leads me down my leadership path, right? Is those things, and treating people where they're at, and honestly, what's wrong with being nice to people and fair, to be honest with you?
Especially in today's society.
Right.
From a leadership acumen perspective,
I'm
terrible at remembering who said quotes, but I'm great at remembering quotes. But somebody once said that let the improvement of yourself keep you so busy that you don't have time to criticize others. And you're an individual that spends a lot of time in reflection. And your leadership acumen, while you do have areas for opportunity and still a long way to go for growth, and you'll never arrive, as we all know, right? It took you a long way to get to where you are. So you're a fantastic leader now. How did you get there?
I wouldn't say I'm a fantastic leader.
You're a great leader now.
Man, I think being self-aware, one of the biggest things I think miss from a leadership perspective, I think some of the great leaders that I have worked with and are currently working with, I think have great, empathy for people, right? And what I would consider, I know it's an industry term, but emotional intelligence, right? Being able to read what's happening, right? And paying attention to people in general, and not just, there are great business leaders that are good numbers people, good spreadsheet people, but they can't present to save their lives, right? They don't have any control of a room or a presence of a room, right? They've never worked on that particular craft. And for me, this goes back to even my athletic side, right? I have to respect you, that you've taken enough to deal with that craft, to look at you when you tell me that I'm doing something wrong as a leader, but yet you don't have the ability or have the wherewithal to fix that about yourself, right? And I think too, from a leadership standpoint, I want to make sure that I'm incredibly approachable. When I tell you I have an open door policy, I'm truthful about it, right? I had probably, I would say 8 or 9 of my 105 sales reps that call me consistently just to chat, right? And they're like, man, we get done. I give them 15, 20, 30 minutes. Some of them are personal friends, right? But I think from a leadership standpoint, you go back to the emotional intelligence piece that you're able to kind of read the situations. And because I think that's a huge lacking piece to that. But the craft, paying attention to the craft that you have and what you're trying to accomplish to get your word out, I think are a couple of big things, man.
So managing a team and managing a sales team are two different things, right?
Yeah.
Because to be in sales, obviously you have to have somewhat of a personality.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to engage. And so I kind of want to talk to you from the moment that you're identifying who's a good fit to the moment I'm thriving now in my specific sales role under your team. So first and foremost, like for you, what makes a great sales individual? What makes a great salesperson?
I know processes are always great, right? From an organizational standpoint, you'd say, how you work, from identification down to taking care of the customer, purchase order, installation, or the close, and how you take care of the customer, right? That's always great to have, right? Do you have something that you can say, if I miss a box, can I go back and say, all right, this took so long to close because I missed something very, very important. I think that's first off. And I can teach you that, right? But what I can't teach you is the ability to just have a conversation with people, right? It is never going to change, right? I think during the pandemic, people said, oh my gosh, salespeople are going to get replaced by telesales, right? It's a cheaper way to go. It's not. It really isn't, because one of the things that we see is people still buy from who they know, like, and trust, right? So I think where people get locked down into a process, or organizations get not locked down into a process, they still can't teach somebody just to have a regular conversation with people, right? And again, I'm going to go back to this, meet them where they're at and figure out what their needs are, right? And it might not even be what you're selling, right? So can I have a conversation? Can I do something outside of work? Can I have something outside of sports? Can I have something outside of politics? Can I just talk to this person and see what they like to do? How you began this, right? What do you like to do, right? What defines you, and having conversations with that, because they'll remember that when it's time for them to purchase the product or they need their problem addressed that you're trying to accomplish. And that's the thing, I think, when I'm looking for salespeople or leaders to lead those particular people, is can you even have a conversation with these people? And it's an art that is very quickly disappearing.
Man, I couldn't agree more. And it's so weird because, for whatever you indulge in, whether it's just a good conversation or a glass of Cabernet or, whatever you're into, when you get around your friends and potentially even your family, like, we have no qualms about vomiting at the mouth and asking all the questions of all the stuff going on in the world and how we're doing and all of that stuff. But when we put a desired outcome into the mix and the ultimate goal of selling something, that we lose our wits about us and feel like we have to shift our focus elsewhere. And I want to talk about how that process starts with you in identifying these skills in people. But prior to that, we had a really interesting discussion recently at the gym. I think it was the same day that I walked out with you. Yeah. We were talking about folks in my business, right? Yeah. We're constantly selling ourselves. And I told you, man, sometimes it's grimy. I don't like it. It feels narcissistic, but we got to do it because people don't know. And in your role, they don't know what we do unless they know what we do, right? Right. And so in your role, being a senior leader, you get pitched a lot on folks coming in to train your sales teams. And you were really fun about how you approach that discussion. What's the biggest roadblock when individuals come to you, whether it's me as a speaker or a sales consultant or whatever, what really turns you off when people come to you and position themselves as a solution to your problem?
It is just exactly what you said, positioning themselves instead of addressing the problem that I have, right? You can very easily in a conversation figure out what the problem is, right? I've always said, don't sell a sales guy. I hate it, right? Don't come to my door and tell me the product that you have because you have no idea if that's the product that I'm looking for, right? So I think that that's the biggest frustration. And again, when I'm out in the field traveling or, in front of customers and I'm listening to my sales team pitch, right? You haven't even addressed, you're missing the entire point. You haven't even addressed the problem, right? So I think that's the skill that's being lost is it takes time, right? I think they say that, the average sales call takes, between 5 and 8 opportunities to get in front of somebody and figure out what a problem is and to draw something out. And by the way, while you're doing that, you're creating a friendship, right? And I think that people miss that. But again, going back to your question is, I think that's what I don't like the most. Don't sell me, right? You shouldn't have to sell me. You can get into your process and still have a conversation with me and meet these particular pieces as they're saying, yes, that's what I want. Or, here's the problem that I need addressed. And you're in the back of your mind, you're starting to put your products in there. You can do that. I think that I've always said, man, if you've gone into a feature benefits data dump, you're lost, right? Your competition has won. I am going to wait till I almost have a purchase order in hand before I've ever introduced the product to you, right? So I think that if I even go back to when I was carrying the bag, that's what made me a little bit more successful, is waiting so long to talk about the product. The people already wanted it, right? They're asking me for it. They're begging you, what is it? What is it, right? And you got them by that particular point. I go back to this, have a conversation with somebody and again, it's a craft that you practice, right? You practice. Be good at, I'll even say this too, be good at failure. You need to start to love failure because that's the only way that you're going to learn some of this stuff.
For sure. Well, one thing that you said stuck out like a sore thumb to me, and that you said, when the customer is asking you questions, like, what's the next step? Or tell me, then that they're interested. And what's so amazing to me about everything that we're saying is, as I reflect back on individuals that thought, or even in fairness to salespeople, we as a society have actually reaffirmed, whenever you hear somebody talk a lot, you say, you got the gift of gab, or you must be a salesperson, right?
Right.
What's interesting about that is the truly successful salespeople, they don't talk, they listen. And they find a way to ask the right questions. And so what's magnificent to me in the sales process, and those that thrive like you, have recognized that the less I talk and the more I ask meaningful questions and get the potential prospect or customer to do something that you, as the Fundamism Podcast listener, you've heard me say it 1 million times. And if I say it 5 million more, I still haven't said it enough. The power of self-discovery is one of the most critical things that you could have in your leadership, sales, personal development tool belt. When you get to a place where you could ask questions to get somebody to identify a need in their life, you don't have to sell them anything because they've sold themselves already.
Right.
All you have to do is fill the void. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how do you identify that skill, Aaron, early on? Because you lead a sales team, which means that you start from, I've identified that I need +1. I need a salesperson. So we gotta put out a request. I gotta hire. Now you go through the interview process. What's that look like for you?
Well, so I mean, when you find the right person, again, you start putting them through. For me, I spend a lot of times just having, I can learn a lot. I know if I'm going to like somebody within the first 10, 15 minutes, right? I've ended literally hundreds of interviews 15 minutes in because this is not the person that I even want to have a beer with, right?
How does that look? Sorry to interrupt. Like, so how do you, because you're a very assertive guy and I'm like the touchy feely, like,
yeah,
try this out. What does that look like? I'm 15 minutes in and this isn't a good fit. What do you say?
No, honestly, I'm a little I'm pretty sarcastic, but I said, I'll get to the point where like, hey, is there anything else? I haven't got a chance to ask them anything, right? And they're just dumping on me, right? And we really, they're trying to sell me right up front why they're the person, right? Like, hey, you got any questions for me at this point in time? And if it's not the right, hey, you know what? Hey, I only wanted to talk with you for a few minutes. And I'm good. I'm good at this point in time. I've even done the really, really quickly. One of my favorite endings is to just say, hey, I have an emergency call. You have 3 minutes to sell me on the job. Yeah. Okay. And then I said, I got to hang up the phone. Go.
Wow. That's very intelligent and deliberate.
Right. So I gotta go.
Two deliberate purposes, right? A, yes. I get the hell out of this room. And B, like you're under pressure. We're going to see how you do.
Right. So those are two of my favorite things. But I've literally said, hey, I think I've got enough. I'm good. To just kind of gauge. And I'll even say, I just want to see if you were crazy or not. And I pretty much found out that you were crazy. So I'm good. How about I'll let you know what next steps is. I'll have, so-and-so reach back out to you. But I'm good. Right. So, there's no point. Let's be honest. There's no reason why you need to drag somebody on for an hour. I've worked with people before and I'm like, why did you let that interview go on for an entire hour? You and I both knew 15 minutes into this thing that this person wasn't. Why'd you do that? Well, I had questions I want to go through. Stop it. Quit wasting their time and yours. That was worthless. Right. So you got to be real with people, Paul. I think you and I have gotten to know each other enough. Life is way too short. Be real with people. Right.
Sure. Yeah, and that's something that I struggle with day in and day out. I don't struggle being real, but I struggle severing the cord. I am very willing to invest more of myself to my own detriment, and that's something I consistently work on. And so, meeting individuals like you that are better at it than I, through the power of osmosis, I hope to learn something. And obviously, you laying on that 6'5", 285 hammer on me. But so all right, so you decided that I might potentially be a good fit. We're going to explore next steps. We're on the onboarding process. What does that look like? How do you start to identify the current skills that I have and potentially close the gaps on them?
Well, and I think we picked up a lot of that from an interview standpoint because I've spent some time really going through from a scenario standpoint. Do the person have these, and I'm going to test you. If you tell me that you've got Miller-Hyman skills or that you've done Maverick or if you've done, these different particular pieces, for me, if you throw out those buzzwords, I'm really going to test you on it, right? If you say, I've got full command of the Atlanta region and I know all the contacts, I'm starting to, hey, I'm going to ask you, what's the pathologist at Children's Hospital of Atlanta? What's that lady's name again? Or, who's the CEO there at Piedmont? Who runs that group again? If you know those people, you better be, for me, those are buzz things. I'll get completely off script because I'm going to definitely challenge you if you bring that stuff up. So if you put that you're a PMP, like I'm going to go down through some processes because I've got a PMP certification from a process management standpoint. I'm going to go through what some of those buzzwords are and really, because if you put that on there, I'm going to test you on some of that stuff and you figure out where people are at. And I think that also determines if this person's going to do this on a resume, what am I going to get out in the field? I'm going to get a bunch of, BS. This guy's going to give me a bunch of fluff because he's a real good talker at this point in time.
For sure. A salesperson, right?
He's a sales guy.
So you've identified as one of your plus 100 that I have an opportunity gap that you could potentially close. What's your process for closing that gap for the skills transfer? What does that look like? Internally
we have and that's the fortunate side of being a part of a large organization, right? I can't teach you those intangibles, man. I call it.
Yeah.
I can't teach that, right? You get that in conversation. I have taken a chance on people that have done B2B phone book sales. I've taken, I come from a background of uniforms and first aid and safety, working at Centos, right? Knocking on door to door. I will take chances on that versus being in the healthcare side every day of the week. I can teach you all those other things, right? I can teach you a selling process. I can teach you how to work a CRM. I can teach you how to map out your territory. I can teach you all those other things, but I can't teach you those intangibles that are hard to put your finger on. Just some of those skills of talk. Again, I go back to this, talking to people, right? It's not necessarily the gift of gab, it's the gift of listening, right? Whether I've even told you this example or not, I've said, if you get a chance to sit in front of a CEO from a listening standpoint, right? You get a chance, pick your CEO, right? Favorite person in history, whoever you want to sit down with. Would you sit there and pepper them with questions the whole time? No, the answer is no, because you'd never learn anything, right? You'd sit there and just listen, right? And so when I find that right, it's the it thing. It's the thing I can't put my finger on, I can't teach you. But you find that, and you find those people that are good listeners, and they're scheming and planning for whatever has to come downstream of all this stuff, right? They're seeing where all this stuff hits in the process. So
I feel like what I take from that is I need to reassess my Fundamism podcast format. So instead of asking all my questions, I just say, go.
Just go. Yeah, you might not like what comes out of it if that's the case. I think you do a better job commentating on it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's an interesting dynamic with having this platform, right? Because the bulk of folks that are tuning in to the Fundamism podcast, they want to hear what the guest has to say and the content matter and all that stuff. Yeah. But we got them because maybe they were at an event that I did, or the concept piqued their interest. And so for me, it's kind of difficult, and I want to make sure that I appease all parties, the guest, the listener, and make sure that people find value on both the Fundamism side as well as whatever the content looks like from our guest. And so, Aaron, you're killing it, obviously. You're a seasoned professional. When I say a seasoned professional, you do a lot of presentations.
I do.
And this is a topic and a function that a lot of people are just frightened to death about.
Right.
And I know that it's changed dramatically over the course of the last couple of months. And what I want to talk to you about is how your environment, your sales environment, your presentation style has changed over the course of the last couple of months. And what have you done to move yourself and your team forward?
Yeah, we're trying to do things from an organizational standpoint, right? We've changed, how some of our platform is, right? As far as how we're submitting, and getting our message out to our customers, for sure. We're doing a lot more, demonstrations and installations of capital equipment from a distance. Teams are doing, strategic presentations. But I think one of the things that has changed for us too is how you look on that screen, right? For me, I look back at where we started back in March, because I done very few video presentations, right? You just did them. A lot of times it's, you're sitting in front of your computer, right? Just doing these things, right? You didn't care about what was in your background. You got your t-shirt, right, straight up your nose. Those are my favorite right now, right? So nobody really cared, because it was like, all right, it's kind of the novelty, right? Now it's, man, this person's probably been doing this for months now, and they still haven't changed anything, right? So for me, I found out very quickly, I can't I'm a stander. I've got a stand-up desk, right? I dance. I move around constantly, right? And it also helps me with my energy, right? So because if I'm on stage or standing up in front of a room, that's where I get my, that's how I get my energy. I'm moving, right? You can't do that in video, right? You've got to stay. It's very, very distracting, right? I also have had to calm my hands down some. I moved my hands around constantly. Again, distracting. and you kind of get that from other people from feedback, right? You need to have people that you trust that are on these calls with you to help you give you feedback, right? It's one of the questions that I think, that you even asked me, and we can follow up on that later, right? Feedback as far as, your new, some of your new promo material, right? How that stuff looks to people, right? You got to find those people that you trust that are going to give you good, honest feedback on what you can do, right? So I think for me, it's, it's a lot of things to pay attention to. One of my big things right now is like what you said, like, why are you shooting that camera straight up your nose, right? Did you not see the whiskey bottle sitting in the back of your, sitting back there? Why do you have a headset on? Why you're not you? I'm just saying, like, like the big muffs with the microphone, right? And I'm shocked that people aren't paying attention.
Why are you wearing Hacksaw Jim Duggan on your
right? And by the way, I love that. I actually took a note. I'm like, okay, I got to see if I can find a Hacksaw Jim Duggan shirt. I love it, man. But I think you go back to some of that stuff going and say, it's all part of the act and the piece that you're trying to put together and the professional piece, because if you've taken the time and forethought, it means so much to your customers that you've taken the time to do that, right? So in practice, here, the last piece to this is practice, right? I've practiced what I'm going to present over and over and over. We just did our national sales meeting. I had 4 presentations, and I'm not joking you. I probably did 125, 150 personal practice sessions where I watched myself to see how I was coming across, listen to my voice, and done that over and over and over again. I think so many people, they know the content. That's not, nobody is questioning your ability to the knowledge of the content. Everybody's questioning your delivery of the content, right? Because that's the biggest thing. When I'm presenting, if you were to never see a slide that came up, right, that you're going to get everything you need to know about me or about what I'm saying from my words. Listen to my words, right? Not necessarily what's up there or what's on that screen. And again, that's one of the things that you got to try to gauge back and forth. And you don't get, and this, if you're doing these video deals right now, you're not getting any feedback, right? So you have to trust, because I've practiced so much that I understand what gets people's attention, because I've been in front of them and I've practiced that and really tried to pattern that sort of thing. And I've got people to give me feedback too, right? Sure. So that's a couple of things that has definitely changed, and people are big time struggling with still.
Well, I want to get into this a little bit more before we start to wrap up. There's 2 really quick questions that I want to ask you before we wrap up our time together, and probably see you at the gym in an hour. But so this conversation we just had, this topic, is one that we could have a whole episode on. Because it really boils down to what you said earlier on, like, how do you show up, your authentic self, your brand is what you called it, right? Yeah. And what's interesting to me is, so I've been either speaking or consulting or in the training realm for 15 years.
Right.
And when I was a lowly call center rep, I say lowly because I was at the bottom of the barrel, trying to find my way. And I was always what you see, like I was always this, like JoJo, the crazy circus clown. And what was amazing is we hired a consulting firm. They taught us some leadership characteristics. My company didn't want to continue to pay the external firm, so they hired me internally. Here I am, 24, 25 years old, and now I'm training all of these folks on leadership, like senior leaders. What the hell do I know about leadership, right? Well, I ended up leaving and going with this consulting firm. Primary client at the time was AT&T, did a bunch of work. Fast forward, I get a call it's basically a casting call with a significant consulting firm that has a deal with the University of Phoenix. And I mean, this consulting company has been around for a significant amount of years, highly successful. And I got several folks that I've worked with that vouch for me, right? So I go on site to the University of Phoenix, and we go up in a train the trainer type deal, and I do my thing. And they tell me, Aaron, you're not a good fit. And I said, oh, perfect. Like, that stinks, but tell me a little bit more as to why you say that. And what it was my style, right? They're very much old school. Like, if you could recall the folks that had, this is your power stance, and you don't come over here, you don't go over here. This is how you deliver. You got your white shirt, you got your red tie, you don't have hacksaw Jim Duggan on your shirt.
Right.
So my style was always a little bit different. And so what's interesting about everything that you said is, I think at the end of the day, my own personal opinion is, who are you in your most authentic form? And I'm not talking about the whiskey bottle in the back. Be smart, use your common sense.
Yes, right.
But my style works for me. I do have the ability to engage with people over a virtual platform. I can show up in a Hacksaw Jim Duggan shirt and have a little bit of fun. And I guess it really culminated for me when I got to talk to a guy that I look up to a great deal, who's had a lot of success in consulting. He says, Paul, you get away, excuse my language, you get away with a lot of shit in front of a group that I could never.
Right.
And so I asked why. And he said, I think it boils down to the fact that it comes from a really good place.
Yeah.
You don't have intent. You're literally about the other person. And so my point in saying all of this is, when you're presenting, whether it's an Aaron Starnes or a Paul Long or, somebody at Lifetime Fitness, at the end of the day, what are you trying to present? What's your desired outcome? How do you get others to be genuinely interested?
Yeah.
And how do you present yourself to be who you are rather than who you're not? So, I admire what you're doing specifically because you told me about the investments that you've made. I had somebody I hired somebody to do the presentation setup, and we got new technology, and you're never good with just the status quo, which is super amazing. You said to me something the other day that a lot of people could relate to, and I wanted to dive in a little bit further.
Yeah.
When I asked you about scheduling this, you said, gosh, Paul, in looking at my calendar, and you showed me your phone, and this look comes over your face of disgust.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? How do you manage knowing that your day is pretty much accounted for weeks in advance?
Yeah.
And find time for your own self.
Interesting. It's very interesting. And I think even it's definitely been manifested, right, in what everybody's going through, right? I was talking to a gentleman this morning. By the way, I've already been to the gym. I was there early this morning. But when doing that, I think that everybody wants a piece of your time, right? And I think you have to start to train people to do things the right way, right? And I mean that by even the people that are trying to monopolize your time. What's the need, right? What's the need? What are we trying to accomplish by doing this? If we just putting a meeting on the books to have a meeting on the books, right? And I think that's some of the things is being able to push back. I'm not a yes person. I remember when I took this job over a couple of years ago that I literally told the hiring VP for this was, if you want a yes person, don't hire me, right? If you want somebody that's going to agree with you, don't hire me. But if you want somebody to do their thing, that you're going to give the ability to do that. So I say all that to say, you gotta be able to push back, right? What's this for, right? We have 3 other meetings set up that are all pretty similar. Can we combine these, right? And again, because everybody does want a piece of your time. By the way, you have a job that you're being paid to do, right? Does this take you away from what the company is asking you completely to do? Because listen, people will pull you into this stuff. They'll delegate. There are people that are really, really good at delegating, and they'll delegate for you if you allow them to do that, right? So as my day starts, I look at it the night before, which is probably not the right thing to do, but my typical day starts at 7 a.m. and goes till 5, 6 o'clock at night a lot of times, right? But you got to make time for yourself in there, right? Whether it be a 30-minute walk, whether it be some downtime, right? I have a Navy SEAL gentleman that that I've become friends with over the years that talk to me about like flipping the switch, right? And that's part of what my schedule looks like. I've really incorporated that over the last 2 years of really documenting my time. That's what works for me, right? Find something that works for you, but documenting every piece of my day is what works for me. My breaks are documented in my calendar, right? So that just knows that I just need to put my head down for 45 minutes and I'm going to go leave this room and do something mindless for a few minutes,
Yes.
right? I've gotten to the point where, and I've done this for years, I don't check email before 9 a.m.
That's smart.
Because my day is going to be completely derailed if I check that email.
Yes.
Okay. So again, I also tell this to people, I don't work well on the road. I don't answer emails very well when I travel, that sort of thing. I'm constantly, I've been spending 20 years in my roles trying to figure some of that stuff out, right? So it's not something that you can rip the Band-Aid off overnight and say, hey, I liked what Aaron said, or I liked what Sean said, or I liked what Paul said, whoever, right? You can't, you got to start fitting pieces in and talk to other people about how they're managing their schedule. This is what works for me. Managing my piece, every piece of my day until I walk out of this office works well for me. I didn't think it would. I'm not an incredibly organized person by nature. I'm not, but technology has allowed me to do that. Use technology to help you and not to hurt you. Right. But even taking it back to what you originally said though, too, Paul, is, you've got to push back and set boundaries for people. Otherwise, they'll monopolize your time, right? Because there will people that will find hours in your day to do that. It's okay. Block times on your calendar, right? So people can see that you have blocked time on your calendar. And you tell them when they can put things in, right? That's the other thing too. Otherwise, people will just start to fill your day. There's no easy science to it. And there's some days that are absolutely crazy, right? But, for me, this was something important for me to do. I was looking forward to it. I'm like, all right, 11 o'clock, let's get this thing done. And I blocked the time off, 15, 20 minutes before this and gave myself a little bit of time after to kind of, I'll probably be all geared up and wired. I've had a blast doing this with you. So, you go do something mindless for a few more minutes and then get back to work. Right. So.
Well, here's the good news. If we were on an airplane right now, the flight crew would be saying over the loudspeaker, make sure your tray tables and seat backs are in an upright position. Dude, coming into the landing. So, as a Fundamism Podcast listener, one of the things we really pride ourselves in is, and I don't do as great enough as a job as I'd like to of this, but really supplying real tactical ideas or things for you to improve your quality of life. And I wrote down 3, Aaron, that you said when managing your calendar or your time in any given day. First and foremost, so these 3 items were, first and foremost, whenever somebody tries to approach you with a meeting or some of your time, a simple question could go a long way. This happened to me recently. A gentleman came up to me at the gym. He said, hey, I've seen your work. I love what you're doing. I'd love to grab coffee with you. I said, perfect. Send me your email or send me an email. So he emails me and it says the same exact thing. I said, listen, it's a pleasure meeting you. I'd love to talk further. Help me understand what the desired outcome of our meeting is. Yeah. That one question, Aaron, he didn't respond. Because at which point it was just to shoot the shit, right? It was just to hang out. And I want to do that. But if I'm going to do that, to your point, number 2, maybe I have to set aside time in my calendar, invite people to do that. I have to set expectations. That's the second thing that I heard. Yes. So the first thing is ask a question. What's the desired outcome? Second thing is the expectations, set boundaries, whether it's I'm out of town and I'm not going to respond in a regular, in the regular time frame that I do, or, this time is allotted for issues like this. Feel free to go ahead and attach yourself to one of those little intervals. I love that one. And then the third one is you talked about just scheduling time for yourself, right? Yeah. It's important that while you're not very logistically inclined or detail oriented, I'm not either. It's important to schedule time for yourself if indeed everybody else is scheduling stuff in there. Yeah. I myself get very discouraged, Aaron, when I wake up and I see my calendar is full. Yeah. Some would say that's a good thing, right? Oh, well, I'm busy. But the same token, like I don't have time to do some of the stuff that I want to do or could potentially do in moving me forward. So
Yeah.
I thank you for that. To the Fundamism Podcast listener, hopefully you took good notes. If not, just rewind. As we start to wrap up our time together, I have an amazing graphic designer, Aaron,
Yes.
who actually goes to Lifetime Fitness. Her name is Audrey Wilson.
Yes.
And she takes the Fundamism Podcast guests and makes some of the most cool and interesting images you've ever seen. And they're all based on pop culture. So my final question to you, my friend, is growing up, what were some of your favorite shows, songs, albums, whatever it may be?
So later, like in my late teenage years, man, I'm a Pocket Kiss fan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man. I had one of my best buddies growing up. His older brother, significantly older than I was, but he found out he couldn't get any of his buddies to go to some of these concerts. Well, Clint, his name was Clint, he'd front me the money and I'd pay him back over time. But we would do some of these concerts together. So went to the original, like as Kiss came back in the late 90s into makeup. So got a chance to see them in without makeup, and then as they came back full makeup in the late 90s, mid 90s, but highly enjoyed that. I love 80s hair band stuff.
Yes.
Trying to get my kids into that, but man, growing up, man, having these Marvel comics come back in, the Avengers series, all these guys coming back on, bringing back Transformers. I love these. I know it's probably cheesy, but this is my childhood being taken out of the caricatures and cartoons and into real life. And it is, I get so geeked up when these movies come out. So. Listen,
you're a Hulk if I've ever seen one, brother. What's interesting about Kiss is, so I grew up an 80s kid too. So I was on the after side of Kiss. Like I still listen to music. I'm really a throwback, like an old soul. I listen to a lot of, yesterday at the gym, I was listening to the Temptations and the Four Tops. But,
oh, nice.
But one thing I remember most about Kiss is when Gene Simmons was married to Shannon Tweed, because Shannon Tweed was on all those old Showtime.
Yeah.
To me in the 80s, I was like, yeah.
Yeah, right. I know.
I grew up and I learned that family over everything, FOE. Hey, Aaron, as we start to wrap up, just in closing, what's one of the most significant leadership lessons or quotes or pieces of advice that you were ever given that kind of helped steer you on the right track or even guide you today?
Man, there's a number of them. And I said, let me even kind of set some of the records straight too with your listeners. A lot of this stuff is, whether it be with food, diet, exercise, and all this stuff, man, it is none of this stuff is instantaneous, right? This is 20 years, right? This goes back for me 30 plus years of things, from a gym standpoint, from an athletic standpoint, even from a leadership standpoint. And for me, probably one of the you learn from the leaders that you never want to be like again, and also from the leaders that you want to take that and see, can you put those into your leadership skills, right? I think significantly, man, I've had a couple leaders in my life, and guys can get really bad about this. I know probably women can as they get older, but men really, really can. And that's surrounding yourself with kind of like your Knights of the Round Table. For me, it's my band of brothers that I've got, some guys here in the neighborhood and friends that I've grown up with, man. We that's what we call ourselves, the band of brothers. We're all on a text message together. And I think strategically I can take and bounce things off of them, right? They're people that you trust. And a leader told me, has talked to me about this over the years of finding those people that are your band of brothers that are going to hold you accountable in leadership and in life and make you be real. So when I ask you, kind of what's your story, that's kind of how some of that stuff is transitioned. But I think significantly, that's one of the biggest things from a leadership standpoint that has changed me over the years is not just people that I've networked with, right? And you call your friends, but like your true down and dirty that I can talk to these people about anything. And I think significantly for me in leadership, that is what's really transformed me from a leader standpoint. The encouragement and and not discouragement, but like, hey, whatever made you think that you were prepared to do that leadership role, right? Having those real conversations. Listen, I've had that one. Somebody told me that one time, right? When I thought that I should be in a job that I didn't get, right? And they looked at me in the face and was like, Aaron, what have you ever done that prepared you for that? And I was like, I hate you right now. I'm going to walk away and be ticked, but you're absolutely right. So significantly having your Knights of the Round Table, your band of brothers that are going to be real with you, man.
Well, I took two things. You could learn from the best, you could learn from the worst, so long as you're present, right? You could see anything that you want to see. So just because you've got somebody around you that maybe doesn't demonstrate the same level of skill or attributes that you would desire, maybe you could still learn from them by seeing what you don't want to do or don't want to become. And secondly, find your band of brothers or sisters or your Knights of the Round Table, whatever it may be, because your circle of influence can play a significant role on how you show up. So, Aaron Starnes, speaking of showing up, dude, I can't wait until I see you again at the gym. We greatly appreciate your time today. I know you got to run, so thank you, my friend. To you, the Fundamism Podcast listener, we couldn't be this, whatever in the heck we are, without you. We greatly appreciate your support. Go out and have some fun today and create some fun in the lives of others. And until we see you on the flip side, be safe, smile often, and have fun. Deuces.